So yeah, I'm hopeful it will change again. But once once we have really left this crisis more or less behind us, and yeah.
Great.
And you?
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest who will introduce herself. Saskia, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Saskia Osendarp, and I'm the Executive Director of the Micronutrient Forum. And the Micronutrient Forum is a global expert organization for micronutrient nutrition that builds consensus and drives collective action with experts and decision makers to advance health and human capital. And we do this by bringing people together in alliances from different disciplines and working on collective action to promote simple evidence-based solutions that we know to eradicate micronutrient deficiencies or micronutrient malnutrition, which are deficiencies of essential nutrients, vitamins, and minerals that our bodies only need in very tiny amounts, but that have lifelong implications if you have deficiencies in them. So and it's also called hidden hunger, because I know you're working for hunger, but this is called hidden hunger because you don't really immediately see it when people are micronutrient deficient, but it will have implications for their health and future.
Okay, and before I ask you some questions about more questions about the Micronutrient Forum. How did you get involved in this type of work?
Yeah, so I got involved. I did my studies in Wageningen in human nutrition, and I was always interested in undernutrition and hunger, and working on developing better scientific insights how to combat hunger and malnutrition. And then I did a PhD in Bangladesh, where we lived and worked for 7 years, and we know each other from that time. And that was on zinc. So the supplementation, we were supplementing pregnant women with zinc, which is one of the micronutrients, an essential mineral that's known to be important for growth of cells and also for growth of children and of newborns as well. So and then I was in the I worked in the slums in Dhaka city, and that really I think sparked my passion to continue to work in this field, because there I saw that with sometimes, with of course these people who live there in extreme circumstances and extreme poverty, facing many, many challenges, there's no simple solutions there. But at least if we can make sure that they get the nutrition, that women get the nutrition they need during pregnancy, that children get the nutrition they need during early childhood, at least we set them up for a little bit better success in life later on. So I think that was the main reason why I decided to continue working in this field.
Mm-hmm. And the Micronutrient Forum that you're working for now, where do they work exactly? In all countries, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the Micronutrient Forum is a global organization, and the difference is that we really bring people together. We did so we don't implement programs ourselves, or we don't do research ourselves, other than desktop research, and we also don't set policies, but we bring stakeholders from research, from programs, from UN, from governments that needs to make decisions, from private sector together to discuss the science, broader science on micronutrients, sometimes science on nutrition, and come with action plans or joint action plans to drive science further, or to come with solutions that can then be promoted with a common voice. And I think it's maybe better to give you some examples of the work that we do. And one example that comes to mind is that last year, when the COVID crisis started, we did see very soon that we realized very soon on, like in March or April last year, that this would have devastating impacts on nutrition, hunger, and malnutrition. Because this was a very complex crisis, and it was a very global crisis. And we saw that during lockdowns, health services got disrupted or were completely stopped. We also saw that, of course, food systems were disrupted and food prices went up and the incomes went down. And there was this economic crisis that's still ongoing. So that we knew that in order to be able to draw attention to this topic, we had to bring together experts that were able to make some meaningful projections on what this would mean. And that's when we brought experts together that worked in health systems, in food systems, and in economists. And we this was the Standing Together for Nutrition Consortium, which is still ongoing, which came up with these projections that really were used also by the leaders of the UN agencies to help raise awareness of this on this topic. And I think that's an example of the work that we do.
No, thanks for that explanation. Yeah, Saskia, what I heard is we initially made quite some progress around ending hunger. Then the last couple of years, it started to increase again.
Yeah.
And that was further aggravated by COVID as well. How is that with the hidden hunger then? Is that a similar story or different?
No, it's the same. And actually, I think a crisis like COVID was, and also climate change, is even more affecting hidden hunger, I think, than hunger overall. Because it's important to realize that vitamins and minerals are found in nutritious foods. And I think one of the big objectives of all these efforts to transform food systems is meant to increase the access to healthy diets that are rich in nutritious foods. So these are fruits, vegetables, but also foods from animal source origin, meat, dairy, that are rich in micronutrients. But these are also the foods that are most vulnerable to shocks. So what we saw happening was that when and that's it with any crisis, since the COVID crisis was global, we saw that the prices, especially of these nutritious foods, went up. And what households do in such circumstances is that they sacrifice actually on these more expensive nutritious foods to allow them to consume sufficient energy. So, the staple foods go up, the consumption of staple foods go up, and the consumption of nutritious foods goes down. So those populations that are already vulnerable for having micronutrient deficiencies, because we knew that the consumption of nutritious foods even before COVID was not sufficient, and that's where about 3 billion people worldwide cannot afford sufficient nutritious foods to fulfill their needs. That even became worse due to COVID. And then in addition to that, during certain stages of life, there are interventions that we know are very effective, micronutrient interventions that we know are very effective, that can help people to get some additional supply. So for instance, during pregnancy, you have a very high need of certain vitamins and minerals. So pregnant women are receiving micronutrient supplements during antenatal care. Young children are receiving in some settings these powders that they can add, that mothers can add to porridges, or they are receiving high dose vitamin A supplements for the first 5 years of life. All these programs were in some regions were completely stopped, and in others there was a severe disruption in the coverage. So all of this together has made it especially an issue for hidden hunger. And having said that, we are unfortunately not able to measure it, because again, that's also not possible to go to the field and do these measurements now. This require blood samples to really see what's happening due to COVID. So I think that's one of the concerns now. Yeah. And the estimates that we did see was on the malnutrition statistics that we can measure, or that we can make projections on. is that we really will see a reverse of a trend that was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that we may lose like up to 2 decades of progress in hunger and malnutrition due to this crisis. And then there's climate change, which is the next crisis on the horizon that, we are even only starting to begin what an impact that will have on hunger and malnutrition. We know that it is reducing, climate change in itself can reduce the nutrient content of food crops. Again, we know that people, when they get displaced or when there's droughts, and that they will get displaced, and there will be more food insecurity and nutrition insecurity. So it's it will definitely always have an impact on hidden hunger as well.
Wow, and what I didn't realize, is what you were saying in terms of research is not going on because, or it's much more complicated because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what I remember,
surveys.
what I remember when I was in Indonesia after the Asian economic crisis, it was found out that the urban areas was much more infected than the rural areas, because in the rural areas they still had access to eggs, So even when the food prices went up, they could cope better. But now at this moment, we don't know. It seems, right, who's most affected.
Correct. Yeah. So there's of course now more and more attempts now to collect information through phone surveys, for instance. People are very resilient, so there are definitely coping mechanisms ongoing, and we're trying to collect that information now, map that more. But what is not possible at the moment, or what is very, especially not in the countries most affected by COVID, is to go out and do surveys and measure these children. So we can collect these data now, or some data is coming in that can kind of strengthen our assumptions. But what is really happening in the field is yet to be seen. But of course, what we also always say is what we have done with this Standing Together for Nutrition is we have delivered projections, and we hope, of course, that they are not destiny, right? They don't have to be destiny. So we hope that it has indeed led to countries stepping up efforts to prevent this from happening, and and that communities can be resilient as well. No one ever has seen a crisis of this scale. We've learned a lot from the Asian economic crisis, from the Ebola crisis. They're similar, but they were more local than this one.
Okay. I often try to remind the listeners about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that we, picked as a world. They might not be perfect, but that's what we're trying to aim for. I guess that, your organization specifically targets SDG number 2, ending hunger. What are some of the other SDGs that you try to cover as well? Can you explain why? I mean, I think it would be nice for the listeners to understand, okay, the relationships between actions and what's called issues.
So we always say that nutrition is actually foundational to almost all of the development goals, if not all. I can imagine that people think like, okay, well, of course you're kind of promoting nutrition because that's what you work in. But what we do, it's really essential for people's futures, and there's these strong interrelationships with, for instance, poverty. We know, with climate change, etc. And I think what is particularly important to realize and with hidden hunger is that these tiny micronutrients, if they lack in early life, it will have implications for the child's growth, but also for the cognitive development of a child. And that will mean that these consequences will be lifelong and will even be transferred to the next generation, because these children, they grow up and they do less well in school. And then as an adult, they come in jobs where they have lesser income. It will have implications for the GDP of a country 30 years down the road. And that's the strong link with poverty. But it also we also know that children that were undernourished early in life, they themselves have a higher risk of becoming obese or overweight later in life. And of delivering children that are undernourished as well. So that's, so it moves into the next generation. We know women empowerment is an SDG 2 goal. It's all, we know that, women, now about 1/3 of all women are anemic, largely due to iron deficiency. There's no progress there. And we know that it makes them less resilient and less capable even to demand more empowerment. So there's really this interconnectivity with nutrition being so foundational for achieving all of the other SDG goals. And that's why we are so passionate to improve it. And with micronutrients, we really do know what to do. I mean, we know the solutions, we know and they're very effective and they're very cost effective. So I think of all as compared to other development agendas, this one is solvable, and it's solvable in a reasonable time frame. But we need, of course, the financial commitments and the political commitments to make it happen.
Yeah, and yeah, that nutrition is essential for all 17 development goals is something that was said during last week during the UN Food Systems Summit, right?
Yeah.
Is there but if our listeners were not able to to participate and listen to last week's summit, what are some of the essential messages from your point of view that they should know?
Tough question. I think we need to make the food systems more resilient so that they can cope with similar situations or similar pandemics in future or some similar shocks in future. We need to make them more sustainable. I think there's no doubt that needs to happen. It's all about the food system should be able to nourish people, not only to feed them, but to really nourish them so that they are able to cope with, that they're fit for the future and that children can live up to their potential. So that was one. I think another one was that we tend to think a lot in silos, and that's not how people that live on the ground face the challenges in life. We need to think more in working together, in integrating solutions, in working. For instance, this was about food systems, but there was a strong message going out to the community. We need to also work together with people working in health system and people working in environment to really make sure that solutions are integrated and can be scaled. And I think that was I think those were for me two of the most important messages. I think the summit itself was a first heroic attempt to bring people together from the different and be inclusive. There were lots of hurdles along the way, and I think lots of discussions have been ongoing also in preparation for the summit about groups that felt left out or about groups that they felt had too much influence over the summit. And I think these are all important lessons that we should take into account when we move forward. But I hope that it doesn't distract from the main message of the summit, that we really need to invest in these food systems now in order to turn the tide.
Yes, Saskia, one of the underlying thoughts of this podcast is everybody's perspective is true but partial. And for me that means that you should always try to search for where you can start talking with the others, and it starts with listening. Because at the end of the day you need to solve it together. So hopefully that's great to hear that during the summit there were attempts to make, even though it might not have been perfect.
No, and I think that's good to admit, but I think we cannot really further polarize debates, and we cannot really further hide behind ideologies. We really have to step up and go beyond our own shadow, as I used to say it. And I think that's to a large part that's also fitting. That's fitting me personally, but that's fitting also, I think, in the mandate of what the Micronutrient Forum tries to achieve. It's not always easy because you don't speak each other's language.
Mhm.
And yes, there is a lot of trust building that is required. But I think, for better or for worse, this Food Systems Summit was a good first effort to move into that direction.
Great. Hey, I know you are a runner. Well, I'm a walker. And this podcast is a spin-off of a 100-mile walk that I've been doing for almost the last 10 years. And then I walk to raise awareness and funds for hunger, poverty, and injustice. If you would be asked to walk 100 miles, so 15 to 20 miles per day, what is the cause that you would walk for?
Yeah, I think the same as you. I actually have been thinking about that, to have because I do run, but I never really run for a good cause. I just run because it distracts myself. And I thought, like, maybe I need that this year. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
And then,
well, I'm challenging people because I'm celebrating my 10th anniversary. So I ask people to walk 100 miles in a month, and then and also be part of my campaign, or at least send a tweet while you're doing that in a month. So using the hashtag so that more people are
this
aware
is the
of
month
this
of
issue.
October, right?
The month of October, yeah. I end on the 17th, and that's World Food Day.
Oh yeah.
So and I start on International Indigenous People Day. So for me, those are two important ones. That I try to lift up and talk about with my co-workers.
Think about it, because I don't want to put it on record yet. I have a goal in mind in October. That's that's a little later, but it might be nice to combine it actually.
Great. When I walk with other people, who accompany me, sometimes for a mile, sometimes for 5, 10, 15. We talk about life, and when you walk, you might have this as well. When you run, you think about what's the purpose of life, and what drives you in life, Saskia?
Yeah.
When your alarm goes off in the morning, what makes it that you decide to wake up and go for it?
Yeah, I think what really drives me in the end of the day is that you can have impact. Oftentimes you don't think so. I always say, if I've met, of course, many people and women and children in their circumstances throughout my career, and a couple of them that stay with you forever. You never will forget them, right? You even if it's like 30 years ago or so, or 25 years ago, you still remember them. And at that moment in time, you feel sometimes helpless because you cannot really help that one individual. But to give you an example, I explained to you about these projections that we did for Stand Together for Nutrition, and I've seen now that these projections were literally mentioned by Melinda Gates last week when she explained the new commitments of the Gates Foundation. And they were used all over by USAID. That led to Samantha Power writing this commitment that Biden did as well for $10 billion in investing in hunger and food security and nutrition. So if that can help to change the life even of a couple of children, but I hope of many more, that's what drives me. It's ridiculous that children still are dying of something that is so simple to prevent. And if they don't die, that it will kind of affect them throughout their entire lives, and we know what to do to prevent it. So,
Saskia, very often we also then talk about religion, spirituality, and about the younger generation, and then some of my co-workers say, the younger generation looks differently at religion and spirituality, and they they don't go to church anymore like the old old generation. Others say they might not go to church, but that doesn't mean that they are, looking differently at life. So in your environment, in your community, what do you see happening among the younger generation and religion and spirituality?
That's a tough question because I'm from the Netherlands, and I think it's one of the most secular countries. I think it has the largest percentage of people that don't feel they belong to a certain religion anymore. But I must say that I'm also, when I look at the younger generation, the generation of our children, I'm still very optimistic, because what I do see is even if they don't go to church anymore, they do much more than we did perhaps embrace Christian values. They do care a lot about their environment and the future of the planet. They do care a lot about the fact, that there is this incredible inequity in the world, and they also are, making choices to, for instance, travel less when it comes to climate change. Rather than going to church, they do live up to these values that are founded in religion. So, yeah, I think that's what I do see happening here, and what I actually makes me very optimistic for future.
Great. And does your organization have special initiatives targeting younger generation as well?
No, but I think not necessarily, because we do bring younger people together with others. And for instance, we have one of the activities that we are most known for is that we have this conference, the Micronutrient Forum conference, that last year was entirely virtual, and that of course attracts a lot of young people that are looking for knowledge from all over the world. And but I do think that we need to engage. We need to maybe do that more. Bring them around the table, asking for for their solutions and objectives. But yeah, that's a good point.
The organization that I work for celebrates 75 years of existence.
Wow.
And that's also a time where we reflect on how did we do. And one of the big topics is how did we do around racial justice, and if we didn't do well, what we should we do better for the future. If you look at the NGO sector as a whole, what are your thoughts in terms of and I know I totally realize it's difficult to generalize, but I'm asking you to do it anyway. So the NGO sector as a whole, how do you think it did and how it is doing around racial justice issues?
Well, I think in general, what we are now very aware of, and what we are actively working towards, is that it's very strange and unacceptable, actually, that all these organizations that work for women and children and families in low income countries are mostly led by white men from high income countries. And I think that means that that's something that we want to actively change. Because first of all, there is an incredible amount of talent, of course, in low and middle income countries. And second, it's just unacceptable that you think about solutions that affect the lives of women in low income countries, and you don't have anyone in the organization, or you hardly have anyone in the organization who really understands the context. And I think that's for all layers of NGOs. You do see that actually basically everywhere. I mean, look at the lineup of speakers last week at the summit. It's still highly dominated by people from high income countries and highly dominated by white people, and to be honest, also by white male of a certain above a certain age. So I think that is in the NGO world something that really needs to change, but it is changing as well. I mean, partly driven by policies and partly driven by awareness that is absolutely not how we should continue. So that is, I think, I'm not sure if that was an answer to your question, but that's
it's very insightful. It's something that my organization is looking at now. Doing an assessment, and very often you have certain blind spots, right? And it's important to identify.
Yeah, I mean,
those.
You always tend to recruit people, for instance, that look a lot like yourself, right? Not only in terms of backgrounds, and I think that's a risk, and so you really have to be very much aware of that. And then, we also have scope for improvement. So we are led by a woman, but not one from a low-income country. We should be. We are also now constantly aware of that. I mean, to work more on that goal. Be aware that it may take some time, and that there's steps to be taken, but it's definitely something that we're working on.
Yeah, there's something totally different, Saskia. Is music is very important to me, so I always ask a music question as well. If I would ask you to mention a song or a piece of music that embodies, for a big part, what you are about, which song or piece of music would that be?
We All Live Together, perhaps. It's an old song, but is it by Paul McCartney? Isn't that Paul McCartney? We all live together.
Oh, could be, yeah.
I may have to come back to this question later on, but because I know that tonight there will be a different song in my head.
But why? Okay, let us talk about We All Live Together. Why does that song pop up now?
It's not that I have that song in my mind every day, but I think that's really what my work, at least, that we cannot do this alone. So we have to work together, and we have to. As I said before, we have to overcome our challenges, our prejudices, and team up together to achieve the goals that we're striving for.
Yeah, I heard you share with us quite some issues that we need to pay attention to, and but what do you worry about most?
Yeah, what I worry about most is that at the moment the COVID crisis has really made most countries be very internally focused again, and governments have had to spend millions and billions of dollars to invest in their own economies. People lost jobs. People are very, very engaged in the political debate about how to best end the COVID crisis in his or her country, and that there is very little attention to the broader global topics, political attention, attention among the public, but also funding are available. And we actually, as part of the work that I told you about, we have been doing also projections on what will happen with ODA, so the development funds, because we know that they are coupled on to the GDPs of countries, and if there's no active push to change it, if nothing will happen, just because the economies of countries have been affected, we projected that it might take until the end of this decade before they will be turned back to normal levels. And that worries me most, that you do see again, you always, in addition to that, you have these other global conflicts that take away a lot of attention. We had Afghanistan, of course, and I think you do see then that this tends to fall between the cracks again, and I think that's what worries me most at the moment, to be honest.
I've said this in earlier episodes. It's kind of weird that you would think that this pandemic, made us all realize that we're all interconnected. And that, you can only solve this problem by working together. But you see a a more tribalism going on than anything else.
Yeah.
So
I think that happened a bit in the beginning. I think that that we were all in this together, and that people felt a bit this is going to really make some major changes to how we live and behave. But it's it's lasting for long, and I'm not really condemning it, because of course when you lose your job, or when you lose a relative or a loved one, for that matter, right, on COVID, or when you work in a hospital here or in the US, and you just work day and night to get through this crisis. I mean, there's lots of issues that people have on their heads that are in their immediate environment. So but for politicians, I would have expected them to maybe also take that bigger picture into account. And I'm concerned when I hear about what they discuss. It's trade treaties. There's lots of I don't know, hidden anomalies that countries discuss among themselves. There's elections coming up, and so there's lots of other stuff that occupies their minds. I'm concerned how that may work out for these bigger global issues that we really can only solve together. So
yeah,
so that's why
are you still hopeful?
Yeah, I'm still hopeful. I'm always hopeful.
Where do you see,
so I think the summit, for instance, was an example. What's hopeful. We had this concert this weekend that I missed. I didn't know it was there. The Global Citizen Live, where all these artists were performing in different cities across the globe for more equity in poverty reduction and in vaccine equity. And so I'm hopeful it will change again once we have really left this crisis more or less behind us. And
great.
And you?
Oh yeah, no, I'm absolutely I don't know, I think I'm very optimistic, and especially because of the remarks that have been made by almost all my guests, and the guests have been more senior people and younger folks, is about the young generation and their actions and their consciousness. That's where my biggest hope is.
No, exactly. And there's some countries also, like look at New Zealand, for instance. I mean, they give hope, right, to how
you see what good leadership, why that is important. So that's a very good example.
For the listener who is still doubting whether or not to contribute to this goal that you're walking for, I always wonder. I've wondered myself so many times when I saw a woman in a slum or in the Sahel, in the conditions where there was absolutely nothing growing around her, and they had a child of 2 years old. I always wonder, like, this could have been me. I could have been born there. So I would give the message to the people, like, just for 1 hour or 1/2 hour, imagine yourself in those situations that you don't know whether you will have sufficient food available the next day to feed your children with good quality food, and that that if you don't, that this will have implications for that child for the rest of his or her life. And I think if we do that more often, then I think you will immediately change, and you will immediately donate to your good goal. So
thank you so much, and good luck with everything you do. And very important work. As you said, hidden hunger is also really close to to my heart. The first 1,000 days of a child are crucial, right? We need to ensure that every child has the right start, and not only a small percentage. So the work that you do is very important, and I applaud you for it. So thanks a lot. Thanks for today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for this discussion, and good luck with your walks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Extra 100 mile. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.